Cavafy grouped his poetry into informal collections, like we've talked about on this channel before. He never published a collection, but his first collection collects poems from between 1897 and 1909. And one of the standout poems, one of the shortest poems in the collection too, is called The Windows, or Ta Parathora in Greek. My Greek pronunciation is not good, I apologize. Let's look at The Windows. Within these dark chambers, where I live through oppressive days, I pace up and down, trying to find the windows. When a window opens, it will be a consolation. But the windows are not to be found, or I am unable to find them, and perhaps it's better that I don't. Perhaps the light will be a new tyranny. Who knows what novel things it will reveal? In the Greek, this is a poem of just one stanza. Most of the lines are between 12 and 14 syllables, which is pretty typical for a Cavafy poem. And there is a loose rhyme scheme in the original. It's AA, BC, DD, CB is the rhyme scheme. It's pretty typical of an early Cavafy poem that all of the lines have some line in the poem that also rhymes with it, but it's not as regular as like an AABBCCDD or an ABACDC kind of rhyme scheme. Let's talk about what's going on with the imagery. There are many early Cavafy poems that take a central image, a window, a wall, a voice, a candle, and play with it. This is not a poem that talks about very particular narrative or paints a picture of a particular speaker. Cavafy knew how to do that. He could be like, I am speaking as the Emperor Julian in 360 AD. But The Windows has a very generalized narrator. It's the I. Within these dark chambers where I live through oppressive days, I pace up and down trying to find the windows. This is the first 2.5 lines. So we have, okay, we're in dark chambers, oppressive days, pacing, trying to find windows. This is some kind of stock imagery, we would say, from a poet. How many times have we heard of poets pacing in dark rooms being sad? This reminds us maybe of Edgar Allan Poe. This reminds us of many romantic poets and Victorian poets who Cavafy, let's remember, would have been familiar with, particularly the Victorian poets of England, given that he lived in England for a while as a boy. So what's Cavafy going to do with this? Cavafy was always clever with flipping things. Well, the next 2 lines say, when a window opens, it will be a consolation. Yeah, the window is going to be a positive thing. But the windows are not to be found, or I am unable to find them. So we have this denial of the desire, once again, pretty stock. Maybe there aren't windows, maybe just the problems with me. But then we have this turn in the last 2.5 lines. And perhaps it's better that I don't, that is, find them. Perhaps the light will be a new tyranny, tyrannia, or tyrannia in the Greek. Who knows what novel things it will reveal? Cavafy isn't being super subtle, but he's turning it on its head and saying, maybe we don't want the windows. Maybe we don't want the light. Maybe the light will be just as difficult as the darkness. This is not a particularly hopeful poem, but it's a poem that I think is good, especially for the young poet to read, that the simplicity of, we're in darkness, we'll find the light, it'll be okay. Maybe we should think twice about that. Maybe there are trade-offs between darkness and light. Maybe revelation is not always good, and maybe concealment is not always bad. You can see, I think, in these imagery that they're very suggestive of many, many different domains of life. This could be about love. I want love. I don't have love. Oh, shoot. But then if I do end up in love or in a love relationship, maybe that will bring its own misery that I'm currently protected from. Maybe I feel in bondage and I want freedom, but freedom will come with particular responsibilities. Maybe I have this secret that I just wish everyone could know and I could tell everyone. Then I'd be free. Oh, but if they knew my secret, then maybe I'd be condemned or judged. It's the kind of poem that Cavafy really excelled at, giving us a single image and making us think about it from different angles and consider kind of the negatives of both sides more than the positives of both sides, and asking us to go maybe a step further in our thinking about poetic imagery, in this instance, a very basic poetic image, than many poets have done and will do. Thanks for hanging out and examining The Windows by Cavafy. I want to read in closing another translation of Windows. The first translation I read was from Evangelos Sakperoglou. That's from the Oxford World Classics translation. I want to read the translation by Edmund Keeley and Philip Sherrard. The lines are a little shorter and the terms are a little more casual. So you'll see that instead of dark chambers, we have dark rooms. So this is The Windows translated by Keeley and Sherrard. In these dark rooms where I live out empty days, I circle back and forth trying to find the windows. It will be a great relief when a window opens. But the windows are not there to be found, or at least I cannot find them. And perhaps it is better that I don't find them. Perhaps the light will prove another tyranny. Who knows what new things it will expose? It's interesting. I like the last line of the Oxford World Classics translation better. Who knows what novel things it will reveal? It's a wonderful line of iambic pentameter, even though Cavafy's lines are a little longer than pentameter. But I like the second to last line of the Keeley and Sherrard translation better. Perhaps the light will prove another tyranny. It's wonderfully iambic. And I think another tyranny I like better than a new tyranny. This is all taste, I think. Nea tyrannia is the Greek. So new tyranny is probably closer than another tyranny. But it's interesting how, as a translator, you get to make these choices. And this is why I think it's very fun to read Cavafy, especially his short poetry, in multiple translations, to get these different angles on these simple words that continue to resonate over a century after they were written.